Okay, so today, forget historical fiction for just a moment. We're diving into a really complex set of source materials, observations, arguments.
All drawn from this intense setting, a 14th century Italian monastery where, political theology met something like early forensic science.
Exactly. And our mission here is to
Uh,
kind of peel back the layers of the story, the narrative itself.
right. To get to the core conflicts of the medieval world as seen through this lens, we're distilling William of Baskerville's methods.
He's our main figure here, the Franciscan friar.
Yeah, his detective work, his reasoning, and we're looking at what really shook the foundations back then. Forbidden knowledge and, maybe surprisingly, laughter.
It sounds almost strange to put it that way, but it was deadly serious. So let's start with William himself. He's fascinating. Not just a monk, not just a diplomat.
No, he's almost a prototype, isn't he? A sort of early rationalist. He reads the world.
Not ancient texts or prophecies, but the physical evidence right in front of him.
And we see this, immediately. The moment he arrives at the Abbey, it's a masterclass.
You mean the incident with the horse?
Brunellus. That's the one. He hasn't seen the horse. Nobody's told him about it, really, but he describes it perfectly.
To the abbot and the monks who are, running around frantically looking for it.
He tells them about its small, round hooves. The footprints showed that. And its pace, uniform.
It was just ambling along.
Unhurriedly, exactly. And he knew it was dark because of long black horsehairs caught on a bramble bush.
Near a path leading. Where was it?
To the dung heap. And he even deduced its height.
Right, from the broken branches. 2 cubits and 3 inches high, he noted. That's just incredibly detailed observation.
Especially for a time when, the default explanation for almost everything was divine will or maybe demonic influence.
So what's underpinning this? Is it just natural genius, or is there a philosophy behind it?
Oh, there's definitely a philosophical framework. It goes back to Alan of Lille. He had this idea, omnis mundi creatura quasi liber et pictura nobis est in speculum.
Which means?
Roughly, every creature in the world, like a picture or a book, is a mirror to us. It's about seeing the divine reflected in creation.
Okay, a fairly standard medieval idea, maybe?
Sort of, but William twists it. He takes this idea about reading the world for eternal truths and applies it to temporal, everyday things.
Like a lost horse.
Yeah.
The universe speaks clearly about mundane stuff, too, not just salvation.
Precisely. He's using this accepted philosophy to justify, empirical observation, looking closely at the here and now.
And that really highlights the clash, doesn't it, between William and the monks at the Abbey?
Absolutely. It's observation versus authority, really. William looks at the physical facts, the hair, the tracks, the branches.
But the monks, they're stuck on the text.
They're looking for the horse as described by, say, Isidore of Seville. The ideal horse, Exigum caput et cecum, small, dry head, sharp ears, big eyes.
They're comparing reality to the book instead of just observing reality itself.
Exactly. What the book says overrides what the ground actually shows them. The snow tells a story, but they're focused on Isidore.
It's a huge shift in thinking. And William wasn't just relying on his sharp eyes and philosophy. He actually had technology.
Yeah, advanced stuff for the time. He was clearly familiar with the scientific thinking attributed to people like Roger Bacon.
Bacon had some pretty wild ideas, didn't he? Almost prophetic.
Definitely. He talked about the science of mechanisms, envisioned ships moving without sails, just one person steering.
Unico nomine regente. And carriages moving without animals. Flying machines.
Yeah, flying machines with beating wings, even submersibles. Really forward-thinking, almost unbelievable for the 14th century.
But William carried technology that was actually real, practical, and maybe just as startling to the monks.
His glasses. The oculi de vitro cum capsula, reading glasses, basically, set in a frame.
And these were new.
Very new, maybe only 20, perhaps 40 years old as an invention. And they were expensive, hugely so.
6 solides in Bologna, the text mentions. That's a lot.
It is. And William treasured them. He called them part of my own body.
So, wait. If they existed, why weren't all the monks in the scriptorium, the library workshop, using them, especially the older ones?
Well, that's the thing. There was likely suspicion. Using a mechanical aid to improve God-given sight.
It seems unnatural. Maybe a sign of weakness.
Or an unnatural reliance on, gadgetry instead of pure contemplation or spiritual insight. William's enthusiasm for his glasses marked him out. He relied on enhanced sight, made him an outsider from the get-go.
It wasn't just about sight, was it? He used other instruments that challenged existing knowledge.
Right, his compass, the magnetic needle. He observed something interesting there, too.
That it doesn't point exactly at the pole star.
Yeah, which was the common belief. He theorized it points to where the celestial meridians converge. His idea was that the magnetic poles somehow submit to the celestial poles.
Wow, that's a sophisticated observation about non-material forces influencing motion. His mind is constantly connecting things.
Macrocosm, microcosm, always observing, always analyzing.
And this analytical skill wasn't just for finding horses or checking compasses. He needed it for secrets, for cryptology.
Yes, to decipher that note, the one left by Venantius, one of the monks who died, it was written in code.
Which, again, pushed him outside the usual channels of knowledge for a European monk.
Absolutely. To break the code, he had to turn to the wisdom of the Arabs. Sources like the Book of the Pious Man's Desire for Knowledge of the Riddles of Ancient Writings.
Sounds very specific. What kind of methods were involved?
Pretty advanced stuff at the time. Substitution ciphers, like using signs of the zodiac for letters, reversing letters, assigning numbers, regrouping the alphabet. Complex work.
So whether it's science, tools, or code breaking, William is constantly drawing on knowledge from outside the, let's say, approved medieval Christian toolkit.
Dangerous knowledge, often. And it's interesting how this parallels the huge political and theological storm raging outside the Abbey walls. That's the whole reason he's there, supposedly.
Right, the diplomatic mission. Which brings us to the poverty dispute.
Exactly. This huge argument that was tearing the church and indeed the empire apart.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. It sounds theological, maybe even obscure, the poverty dispute. But it had massive political consequences.
Huge. So what were the Franciscans arguing? Specifically, the radical wing, the spirituals?
Was their core claim.
At a big meeting, the Perugia chapter in 1322, led by Michael of Cesena, they formally declared that Christ and his apostles owned absolutely nothing. No property, not individually, not even collectively.
Nothing at all. So the clothes they wore, the food they ate.
They argued it was just sacked simple use, the use of fact. They could use things necessary for life, like a tunic or a staff, but they had no right of ownership over them.
Why was it so important to them?
They saw this absolute poverty as vital. It was the source of virtue, the way to maintain the purity of the original apostolic life, free from worldly corruption.
Okay, that sounds principled, even admirable in a way. But why was it so dangerous politically? Was it just about the church's own wealth?
Well, yes, that was part of it. But it was fundamentally about power. Pope John XXII, who was in Avignon at the time.
He saw this doctrine as a direct attack.
A fundamental undermining of the papacy's legitimacy. If Christ, the founder, owned nothing, how could the church justify its vast landholdings, its immense wealth, its political interventions?
Its claims to temporal power, like crowning emperors, appointing bishops, controlling territory.
Exactly. The whole edifice of papal authority rested on the idea of the church as Christ's powerful earthly heir. The poverty doctrine just blew that apart.
So the Pope had to react strongly.
He did, with a hammer, as you said earlier. In 1323, he issued a papal decree, Cum inter nullos,
And that decree.
condemned the Franciscan position on poverty as heresy.
Oh.
Outright heresy.
Which forced everyone to choose sides.
Massively so. It wasn't just a church squabble anymore. Secular rulers got involved. Louis the Bavarian, the Holy Roman Emperor.
He sided with the Franciscans.
He supported the spirituals, yeah.
Yeah.
He saw the poverty doctrine as a perfect weapon against Pope John, whom Louis ended up declaring a heretic himself. It became a proxy war over papal versus imperial power.
Okay, so that's the explosive backdrop for William's arrival at the Abbey. And his own views fit into this.
Very much so. William was heavily influenced by thinkers like Marsilius of Padua. For him, the debate wasn't really about whether Christ owned his tunic or not.
What was the real question for William then?
It was about whether the church had any business interfering in temporal government. At all.
Separation of church and state, essentially.
Pretty much. His idea, which was revolutionary, was that God gave the people, the community, the natural right and ability to make their own laws and govern themselves.
Without needing approval from the church.
Entirely separate from ecclesiastical confirmation. Temporal authority comes from the community, not from the Pope. That put him way ahead of his time and made him incredibly dangerous to the traditional powers.
So William walks into this isolated abbey, carrying these modern ideas about science and politics, ready for a debate about poverty.
Only to find the immediate problem is murder. And the murders seem rooted in a much older, deeper fear. The fear of a specific kind of knowledge.
Centered around the library, which sounds less like a place of quiet study and more like a fortress.
Oh, it absolutely was, designed as a labyrinth. An octagonal tower, 56 rooms, built according to, quote, laws of celestial harmony. but practically speaking.
It was built to confuse, to keep
Yeah.
people out or trap them inside.
Exactly. Hidden entrances, deliberately confusing layout. Even the ventilation shafts were designed to create weird drafts and sounds.
Ghostly noises. Phantasma, as the monks called them,
Yeah.
using fear to guard the knowledge.
Psychological warfare, almost. Knowledge wasn't just restricted, it was physically and mentally guarded.
And the chief guard, the architect of this defense, in many ways, was the blind old monk Jorge of Burgos.
All right, yeah. His entire worldview, his entire purpose in old age seemed to be about suppressing one specific threat. Laughter. Which seems bizarre, but for him it was the ultimate danger. He saw it as signum stultitia, a sign of foolishness.
And his justification was theological.
Deeply. He relied heavily on figures like Peter the Chanter, quoting him saying that Christ could perhaps have laughed.
A non legitur eo us fuis. It's not written that he did so.
Precisely. And if Christ, the model of perfection, isn't recorded as laughing, then laughter cannot be a truly good or virtuous thing. It must be suspect.
But what was the actual danger he perceived? Why was a simple joke or a funny story so threatening?
Because in his view, laughter destroyed seriousness. If you laugh at evil, you're not taking it seriously enough, you don't have the will to fight it. And if you laugh at good things, you fail to appreciate their true weight, their power, their sanctity. Laughter, for Jorge, leveled everything. It didn't respect hierarchy or sacredness.
Which led to his obsession with one particular missing book.
The ultimate prize, the ultimate danger, the lost second book of Aristotle's Poetics, the book on comedy.
This was the book causing all the deaths.
Yeah.
Why was an ancient Greek text on comedy so explosive in a 14th century monastery?
Because of how Aristotle apparently defined comedy as mimesis, imitation of things that are mean and ridiculous, not necessarily evil, just flawed, base, awkward, human.
And Aristotle didn't condemn this.
Quite the opposite, according to the descriptions William finds. Aristotle saw the impulse to laugh as a natural, even a good force. He thought it had cognitive value.
Cognitive value.
By showing things as, quote, worse than they are. Laughter could expose the absurd, the hypocritical. It could reveal truths that solemnity might hide. It's a tool for understanding human flaws.
So comedy wasn't just trivial entertainment. It was a way of knowing, a way of critiquing, a threat to the serious heroic narratives.
Exactly. A threat to the narratives of saints, martyrs, tragic heroes that upheld the church's authority. Comedy empowers the ordinary person's perspective.
It validates the language and viewpoint of the common people.
That's what Jorge feared most. He believed wisdom shouldn't reside in the language of the common people, in their jokes and earthy realism. He explicitly wanted limits on knowledge. Sunt enim certi limites.
Ultra quos non licet procedere. There are certain limits beyond which it is not lawful to proceed. Knowledge must be controlled.
Which brings us to the actual murder weapon, horrifyingly ingenious.
The poisoned book. The act of reading itself becomes lethal.
The very pages of Aristotle's book on comedy were treated with poison. A toxic substance Severinus, the herbalist, had been working with.
Described as pharmakon, which means...
It's a word with a double meaning in Greek. It means both poison and medicine or remedy.
Oh, the irony is just unbearable. The book, The Medicine for Ignorance About Comedy, is literally poisoned.
The cure is the killer. And how it worked. The pages were sticky, perhaps from the poison mixture.
So the reader would lick their fingers to turn the page.
And ingest the poison, killing themselves in the very act of seeking this forbidden knowledge, this dangerous truth about laughter.
It's the perfect symbol for Jorge's philosophy. Knowledge, if it's the wrong kind or gets into the wrong hands, is fatal. His ultimate defense.
He ensures the book remains unread, or read only at the cost of death.
So William's whole investigation, beyond the politics, beyond the poverty debate, becomes this fight against that core idea.
The idea that knowledge must be contained, filtered, kept within the labyrinth, guarded by fear, fear of confusion, fear of ghosts, fear of laughter itself.
And in the end, well, spoiler alert, but things don't end well for the Abbey.
No. The diplomatic mission fails spectacularly. The library burns, taking the book and countless others with it. The political conflicts outside continue unabated.
Yet William keeps investigating right up to the chaotic end. Why? What drove him when the original mission was clearly doomed?
He admits it himself, almost sheepishly. He just enjoyed the process. The pleasure, he said, of untangling a really complicated knot. That intellectual challenge.
That's fascinating. It wasn't about saving the world or even the church. It was about the satisfaction of figuring things out.
Finding order, even if it's just temporary, local order in one small corner of a chaotic world. He actually confesses profound doubt later on.
Influenced by nominalist philosophy like Occam.
Yeah. He says he suspects there might be no inherent order in the universe at all, no grand design to discover. But finding a series of connections, even just in some small sectors of this world, finding a pattern, even if it's one we impose, that's deeply satisfying. That local truth is enough.
It brings us back to the books, doesn't it? He said, the good of a book is that it be read.
If it is not read, the book contains signs that produce no concepts, and therefore it is dead. Knowledge needs interaction to live.
So we'll leave you, our listeners, with this thought to chew on, maybe. Jorge acted to protect a certain order by keeping knowledge locked away, by making it literally deadly.
So when does protecting knowledge, maybe through secrecy, maybe through high cost, maybe through institutional inertia or fear, when does that protection actually become an act of destruction? And what happens to us, to a culture, when the fear of laughter, the fear of the critical, questioning voice, wins out over the search for truth, however uncomfortable that truth might be?